on Gazbot, I was just starting to put together the video and things that I've shot for this video you're about to watch. Today's Tuesday, it's a little before 8 in the morning. And I was looking for, when I do thumbnails for these, a lot of times I'll have kind of a template built. And I'm like, oh, what was the template? And then I was like, well, what was the last time I updated? And I found a file. And my computer got messed up and I lost a lot of files. Some were lost forever. Some were just like corrupted. The point is, I don't always know even if I have certain things or where they are anymore from the past. So I was looking for that file. And I'm like, well, and I found one that was kind of recent. And I was like, let me look at my YouTube page and see when the last horror update was. And I couldn't find it in my recent one. I'm like, well, I guess it was a while ago. And I'm looking through my Gaz reports. And if I'm looking at it right, the last update was like 4 years ago, which just reinforces how horrible that is, that it's been 4 years. Not that I haven't worked on the horror in 4 years, but But anyway, so I guess at some point I just started wrapping all the horror updates into the Gaz report, or it became whatever. So now I'm like, well, do I want to continue to separate them? Do I want to have the Gaz report vlog, which is just what's going on in my life and random art stuff and whatever I want, and then the horror production report is just horror? I mean, clearly I talk about the horror in the Gaz report, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do. I think what I'm going to do for this one is I'm going to call it the Gaz report horror update, like kind of double title it and put it in both, and then see, going forward, see if it makes sense to keep it separate. I don't know. But yeah, I also, the one I happened to watch, it did have a lot of real life stuff mixed in. So I'm like, oh, this just feels like a vlog. But it did have a lot of me talking about the process and what I was struggling with in terms of the actual art. Whereas the one you're about to watch is just me talking about like how much I got done. It's very much like early 100 days of making comics kind of video. Like I did this much in this time, and so I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, here is the stuff I shot previously, packaged in the way I decided to now, which is sort of with a dual heading. It is February 11th in the afternoon, Saturday. This is actually the Saturday after my mountain hike. So it's been 1 week. I had a fairly productive, for me lately, art week. And the idea was I wanted to finish up another Power Rangers print to complete a team so I could put that on Etsy to get a little more revenue coming in if possible, or at the very least just get more stuff out there, because I hadn't been putting a lot of Power Ranger prints out for a while. New ones anyway. And then I have all 10 of my sketch cards roughed, but I have to do the actual art. But that's the kind of stuff I could squeeze in a little bit at a time here and there over the week. Something I have trouble doing in small bursts, and this is something I learned repeatedly, but almost immediately when I did the first 100 days of making comics, 30 minutes a day working on a comic is not enough for me. I mean, I don't think it is for anybody, but I can't read other people's minds or whatever. But I feel like it just takes me so long to be like, where was I on the page? What was I doing? Am I inking? Where's that going? Okay, got my file and then time's up, And so it's hard. I don't know, there's a lot more thinking involved in that than just like inking something onto a card that I've already drawn or whatever. But anyway, so my goal was to kind of get that print done, and then with the extra chunk of time I have this weekend, work on the horror. Ideally, finish inking a page. And this is the page I'm looking at. Notice it's on my iPad. My Cintiq finally died after like 10 or 15 years. I got an X Pen monitor. I did not like it. I returned it. So for the time being, I'm working on my iPad. Now, when I saw this, I was like, oh, I've only really kind of inked part of one panel. I thought I did more, but then inks me, and okay, there's a lot more done. So I should have no trouble finishing the inks on this page this weekend. Things can always come up, things can always change, but that's like my plan. And then during the week, going back to working on the Ultraman cards till I get those done, and then either doing a few more prints or getting back to the horror. But yeah, that's kind of my rough plan for today, this weekend, into next week. Oh, but first, I got this set up, having a cup of coffee. I got the window open, letting a little fresh air in. I haven't had that window open, I think, since I moved in. So let a little fresh air in. And I'm going to go take a shower, which I very badly need, and a shave, which I need, but not as badly as the shower, and come in fresh and just work until dinner time, and then hopefully work after dinner time, but we'll see. And if not, then I'll work tomorrow in the morning/afternoon. I have showered, I have shaved. I am almost ready to get to work. I have this CD. I haven't bought physical media in a very long time. I've probably bought like 3 or 4 CDs here and there sporadically, or a DVD or two. But even that was years ago. I bought this. This is a Japanese singer who just died recently, actually, Ichiro Mizuki, who is most famous for doing the theme song to Mazinger Z, but it's done a lot of what they call anime or anime songs, but live action as well. I like his singing. I like his whole swaggery personality. He's just this goofy, campy guy that's awesome. And I have I have like a digital download of one of his albums, and you can get a lot of it streaming. But this is like this super deluxe anime album, double album with all this stuff. I ordered it from Japan the day it came out, and it was expensive, especially for a CD and what they go for now. But I'm like, I'm never going to be able to get this streaming anywhere. This is the thing, like if I wanted, I have to buy it. And then I buy things from Japan fairly regularly, and I know the shipping's a little high. The shipping for this cost more than the CD itself, and the CD wasn't cheap. I didn't know that at first because, I'll buy a figure or something and it'd be like, in America it'd be free or $5 or $7 or $10. And from Japan it might be like 15. And so I was like, well, how much could this cost? If it's like $2 in America, maybe it's $5, $10. No, it was like $30 shipping, but I had already bought it and it was like a third party shipper. So like, we have it in the warehouse. If you want it, it's $30. And I'm like, God damn. So I would never have bought this for what I ended up paying for it. However, I've been waiting. I got it a week or two ago, and I've been waiting for when I had time to really enjoy it. So I'm going to put it on and just listen to this while I try to get some work on the Horror A4 done, and hopefully this will get me going. Most new computers don't have CD players, but I've never had a computer that didn't have a CD player since before CD players were a thing. The only CD player I have is in my car. I think. I'm pretty sure there's a CD player in my car. Yeah, there is. No, there is. So does that mean I have to wait for a road trip to listen to this now? That is super disappointing. I just had one of those awesome brain farts where I'm like, you know what? I got a couple CDs from Japan years ago that I have kicking around somewhere. Why don't I put one of those on instead? Because I still need a CD player. Well, I did a bit over an hour, and I basically mostly finished inking this one panel that I had previously started. So, slow, but something. Great, another 45 minutes. And I finished this one. This is like 100% complete, grade and everything. It needs lettering and it needs the box inked in, but otherwise done. This one still needs work, but I finished this whole figure and part of the background pretty quickly. This is one of those panels that even though it was penciled pretty tightly, I had to redo the hand and arm, and then I wasn't sure what I was doing with the grays. This one, also partially because this character is a lot less specific. I always give the example of Ultraman or a robot being harder to draw than Godzilla because organic things have a little bit more leeway and asymmetrical things have a little bit more leeway, and this character is that. So they were a lot easier to just go in and throw a bunch of lines and it didn't matter as much, whereas this one, not only does it have a specific set of armor and all that stuff, but I've only drawn it a few times, so I'm doing that thing where I'm like, oh, I drew it a little different the last couple times, and I'm trying to like homogenize and hybridize them to become this final version, I guess, which is something should be done ahead of time. I almost never do. But there you go. Had dinner and then put another 45 minutes in this panel. I basically got all the inks done. Now I just have to do the grays, and I will have finished 2 panels, inks and grays today. Well, assuming I do the grays later on and assuming I don't do any more and blah, 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 blah. But anyway, progress of a sort. And now I'm off to watch some TV, which is not productive, but that's okay, because life. Working on this panel, mostly finished with this guy, mostly finished with him. I got to do the background and add some whites and stuff. Also spent a little time dealing with Procreate. I don't know if you ever use it. The fill tool is terrible. It's not like a bucket. You kind of pull it. Anyway, I kept getting artifacts, and I figured out how to change the threshold, and I fixed it, but that took a little bit of time as well, which is always annoying to spend time I should be drawing doing that. But here we are. I'm gonna get a cup of coffee and jump back in. All right, spent about an hour and a half. Finished up this panel and finished up this panel. This panel was a weird one where it was the one that was most done, but I knew it was gonna be a problem just because I had like 1,000 layers of effects and it was covering up some of the art and I didn't know how I was gonna do it. I find that most of the hang-ups in progress, well, there's a million reasons, but when I'm actually drawing, comes from not knowing what to do, not knowing how to draw a thing or get it in a certain perspective, or kind of being overly precious and like, I drew the thing under it, so I don't want to cover it up with the energy. And then I really like the rough of the energy, so I got to copy that. But then and it comes down to decision making. I think I've compared it to acting before, where there's the idea of like, you got to make a choice, you got to commit, you got to make a decision. And the only wrong decision is no decision. But there are better decisions than others, and what I find myself and a lot of artists doing sometimes is doing the Nick Cage of choosing every option of like, I'm angry and sad and mad and melancholy and weird and like, and like you could do that, I guess. And that's what was happening with this panel. But eventually I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to decide that the energy that's hitting the character Shining Star is on top of everything. And once I decided that, I'm like, okay, everything else goes in the background. And then I decided that I'd have a big white burst around him. Okay. And then the energy coming to him from Darkstar attacking him would be 50% opacity, because that's how I drew it. Previous page. I just, for whatever reason, drew it 50% opacity. Decided that's how his energy works, but when it hit Shining Star, I had already drawn in the next panel white coming out of him without an outline, just pure white, 100%. So I was like, well, the energy coming out of him in this panel will have an outline, but it'll be 100% pure white. I may decide to go back and erase some of those outlines. I'm not sure, but for now it's done. I made some choices for right or wrong. And once I made those choices, then I could just go ahead and follow through and whatever. Similarly, when I was having trouble with the costume and how it was sort of different in different places, once I just decided this is what I'm doing and I just went with it, then it was easier. Oh, and previously up in here, you can kind of still see the residuals of it. I had like a really defined superhero six-pack spandex. But when I drew them down here, and when I've drawn them elsewhere, it's more like a spandex suit where you don't see muscles, because usually you don't. And it's a little bit more like an actual person in a suit versus somebody painted. And so I went back in and erased some of it and put a little fabric. It's still muscular, it's still tight, but I just tried to make it match my other decisions more. And it's coming up on the afternoon Sunday, and that's where we're at. The other technical issue I was having regards drawing panel borders in Procreate, and I'm having a hard time doing it. And when I looked up tutorials, none of them are exactly what I want. I want to just use the rectangle selection tool and stroke it. And there's no option for that. I can fill it and then kind of try to eyeball it smaller. And then there's ways you make a shape and then you kind of put it up behind it, but that's a little imprecise and not consistent. You can snap your line to make it straight. So I picked a technical pen and snapped line for that top panel, but it's not what I want. But that's something I'm not going to worry about now, because that's like an easy technical fix that even if I wait until all the pages are done in the entire book, I can go back and fix the panels if I need to. I don't want to get hung up on that, and I had already spent a few minutes searching, so I decided to just stop. So I'm losing track, but I just did another half hour. So that puts me between yesterday and today either at 4 hours or 4.5 hours or 5 hours. Or a million hours, or 1 hour. No, 4 or 5 hours total. I don't know if I'll do any more. I'm going to stop now. I might be able to do more later. Again, not as much as I wanted to do, but more than I've been doing, so that's good. I put in the panel borders. Again, they're not ideal. I could fix them later if I need to, or maybe I won't care later. I mostly got this one done. I did all the inks on this figure, Darkstar. I need to do a little bit more on Shining Star, and then I need to go in and do the final grays. So that'll just leave this panel potential. Well, both of them need to be done, but this is the one that, even though it's worked on, I didn't work on it today or yesterday. These three are completely done. Looking at the page holistically, though, I gotta wait until I put in the shading here and here, but right now, this is so dark. I mean, I need to lighten it up because it's just dominating the whole page, and I don't really want that, but that's something I will do at the very end. And that's it for now. Excuse the time jump, whatever. I got to the end of editing this video. This is days later, and I'm like, I never said goodbye, or that's the end, or whatever. So that is where I got to. I didn't finish the page, unfortunately. And, well, I'm still working on it, though. So that's the good news. I'm in the future. Things are still going well. Stay tuned for the next video, which will be more of a vloggy video, but still will have art in it. But it won't be such a horror production report update. And I am just going to keep them all in one thing. I'm labeling this one horror production report update, and I'm putting it in that playlist. But if you're watching it, that playlist is effectively dead. For now, maybe if I do the Kickstarter, for now, whatever, it doesn't matter. None of this matters. Look, here's Mecha King Ghidorah. If I turn it on, I'm the fourth head. Good enough? Yes.